Welcome to yet another episode of A Story for Your Query. In the late 19th century, a series of experiments were performed on frogs to determine the sensitivity of their nervous system. Temperature was one of them. One such experiment found that the frog was boiled alive without moving because the temperature of the water inside the pot was increased by such small incremental degrees which the frog never noticed. Let me narrate the experiment to you. A frog was put in a vessel of water and the water was heated. Gradually, the temperature rose, but being a cold-blooded animal, the frog managed to adjust its temperature accordingly. As the water started to reach the boiling point, the frog was no longer able to keep up and manage its body temperature. So, the frog tried to jump out of the vessel, but couldn't make it. So, the frog died. The premise is simple. If the frog was suddenly put into a pot of boiling water, it would have jumped out and saved itself from the impending death. But the frog is put into lukewarm water with the temperature rising slowly. It will not perceive any danger to itself and it will be cooked to death. My question to you, is the hot water responsible for killing the frog? Or is it the inability of the frog to jump out and save itself which was the cause? The frog keeps trying to the slow, gradual change in the temperature. But when the water reaches the boiling point, the frog wants to jump out but has already lost its strength to do so. The problem is that the human equivalent of the boiling frog syndrome is observed more commonly than we would like to admit. An example from daily life. Your spouse who sees you on a daily basis does not realize that you're putting on weight, but your distant relative whom you see once in a blue moon is quick to notice that you've added fat around your midriff. The very concept of survival of the fittest depends on the boiling frog syndrome, where those who do not notice and respond to the gradual changes in the environment are the first to die. There are boiling frogs that we come across even in business. Kodak is a case in point. The American technology company Kodak was built on the culture of innovation and change in 1888. Kodak had a dominant position in the photographic film in its time. Its tagline, Kodak Moments, was so famous that it was used for promoting events. Kodak owned the film market with 90% market share in the 1970s. The first digital camera was designed by a Kodak engineer in 1975. It was the filmless photography at that time, so they didn't want to threaten their film business and didn't go into the marketing of the digital camera. Whereas other digital companies like Sony, Nikon, Fujifilm took advantage of the situation. Kodak missed the opportunities in the technology which they themselves had invented. If Kodak had taken the efforts to stay ahead of the competition, do some course correction, and not become boiling frog, the story would have been different. Here is one of the news items that I came across. Climate scientists warn. What are they warning us about? The scientists found that people were generally more likely to tweet about the weather if it was unusual for the season where they lived. For example, the winter is warm, the winter is very cold, and so on. They are most reluctant to act on it. Does this mean humans will ever realize they are in a pot of boiling water? Hope they do before it's too late. How does the syndrome work in relationships? A person in an unhealthy or abusive relationship may continue to be in the toxic relationship because he or she has lost the strength to jump. Learned helplessness gets the better of the individual at this point in time. Can the syndrome work positively? Yes, it does. A CEO slowly prepares an employee for taking over the business by putting more and more responsibility on him over time, so that the time the employee takes over the business, he is fully prepared. If an athlete went out and ran a marathon without performing any kind of training first, it would have a catastrophic effect on his or her body. To avoid this, the athlete trains over a period of time to build muscle and stamina according to what his or her body can comfortably tolerate at that time. Gradually, the athlete increases the training as the body strengthens. By the time he or she run the marathon, the body is able to cope with the intense physical stress that it is put under. We're going to jump while we have the strength. Help the people to decide when to jump. This phenomena has a parallel in the creeping normality. Creeping normality is also called landscape amnesia, and it is the way a major change can be accepted as a normal situation if it happens slowly through unnoticeable increments of change. The change would otherwise be regarded as objectionable if it took place in a single step or short period. Let me narrate the story of the Arab and the camel, which should explain the concept discussed so far. Hamid was traveling to a faraway village in the middle of the desert. He only had a camel for company. As night fell, Hamid put up a tent. While it was hot during the daytime, the desert would get extremely cold at night. Hamid crawled into the tent, spread a mat, and lay down on it. Soon it was dark, and the Arab found his eyes drooping. Someone outside called out to him, "Friend, it's cold here. Can you please take me into your tent?" It was the camel, which was shivering in the cold. "I'm sorry, Mr. Camel, the tent is too small and you're too huge," said Hamid. "There is no place for the two of us here in this tent." "I understand. I will only put my nose inside the tent," pleaded the camel. Hamid agreed. The camel put its head inside the tent and said, "Thank you." "Good night, friend," said Hamid, and he closed his eyes. "My friend, it's getting colder," said the camel. "Let me bring my neck, just my neck, into the tent," pleaded the camel. "All right, friend," mumbled Hamid. He was really very, very sleepy. So the camel put his neck into the tent and the rest of the body was outside. Few minutes later, the camel spoke with that voice which was trembling with cold. "Friend, you know how delicate my hump is. There is enough space here for my hump." Hamid did not want to speak. He grunted. Gradually, the camel inched its way into the tent and Hamid was out of the tent. When the day broke, Hamid was shivering with cold out in the open and the camel was slowing away inside the tent. Its head, neck, and hump and the whole body was inside. Only its tail was hanging outside the tent. Just like the camel refusing to leave the tent, sometimes drops in our well-being can be very difficult to shift. So, it is much better and less distressing to not allow this to occur in the first place at all, rather than trying to remedy it after it has happened. Rethink, be ready to jump. Don't be a frog in lukewarm water. This is the 20th episode of Season 1. We shall come soon with the Season 2. Meanwhile, listen into the Season 1 episodes all over again. That is all for today. Till we meet again with Season 2 fresh episodes.